everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy that you wanted to join me today because today I'm going to answer some of your questions about zero waste. But before we get started, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. I know. Skillshare is an online learning community with tons of resources and classes on basically everything. And Skillshare is a really cool platform to use if you're interested in learning more about zero waste or how to be more sustainable, because they have tons of courses about crafts that can come in really handy. I've been looking at sewing classes because repairing your clothes is much more sustainable than buying new ones, and I've been looking into urban gardening classes and how to take better care of my plants because I like to regrow vegetables and I like to use herbs in my kitchen. All of this and more is stuff that you can learn on Skillshare, so I'm really stoked to be partnering up with them for this video. And there's a link in the description, and the first 1,000 people to sign up through that link will get 2 months of free Skillshare usage. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now let's get right into the question. Do you do plogging? Plogging is a combination of the words picking up trash and jogging, which means that you pick up trash while you exercise outside. And yes, that's something that I've been doing for quite a while, and I also just make it my deal to every time I walk outside, I pick up at least 3 pieces of trash. I also made 2 videos where I was outside doing trash bingo, so that is kind of related to plogging. If you want to go and watch those, they're in the description. None of my friends and family agrees with me because it's complicated to live sustainably and I want to enjoy my life. How do I talk to them in a constructive way? Because we always end up fighting. This is something that happens a lot, I feel like, when you start to transition into a more sustainable lifestyle and none of your friends or family are doing the same. And the thing that I think is the most important here is that you should never tell anyone else what they should do or what they are doing wrong. You should show them by example how you do things another way. Instead of telling other people, you should do this because you're doing this wrong and this is not right, just change how you act yourself, and then slowly but surely some people will start to either adapt those habits as well or start to understand why you are doing them. When I was in the beginning of becoming zero waste and when I was in the beginning of becoming a vegan as well, so many people commented that, oh, they could never do that because oh, it's so complicated, or oh, you must not be having fun, or you must never be enjoying life. And those comments fall super flat if you're a vibrant, happy, joyful person. And also talk to your friends and family about what it means to you that they respect how you're doing it. You tell them that it means something to you rather than telling them to do something to save the planet. That sometimes also just sticks a little bit better. Zero waste pet and dog tips. I super get this question or demand for answers when it comes to having a zero waste pet. I haven't talked tons about it, although Molly is featured on my channel a little bit. I've talked a little bit about how I use a plant-based bag for her poop if she poops on the sidewalk, but if we're in a park or a forest area, I'll just leave it, I'll pick it up with a leaf and throw it into the bushes, stuff like that. There's a lot to cover when it comes to having a pet and trying to have that pet zero waste, everything from food and toys and poop, and there's just a lot of different things. In the meantime, Going Zero Waste has an amazing post about her dog that is zero waste, so I'll leave that in the description as well. What makes a beauty product eco-friendly? So there's a lot of things that goes into whether or not any product is sustainable, but most of all is consistency. If a brand makes a line of products and only one of those products in that line is considered eco-friendly or sustainable, then it doesn't really do anything because they're not committed to consistently doing something in a sustainable direction. They're only making one product because they're catering to a specific audience that likes things eco-friendly, but they still make tons of other products that aren't. Then I wouldn't say that product is sustainable. However, if a brand consistently commits to sustainable sourcing of ingredients, to sustainable packaging, to disposal, to recycling, to all of these things consistently and throughout their entire line of products, then I would call a product sustainable. What is your opinion on quitting shampoo? I actually did this in the very beginning of my zero waste journey, and my hair didn't like it all that lot. My hair is also, awful. But I know it works really well for some people. I just don't think I'm one of those people. So my opinion of it is, if it works for you, then it's 100% great. Is it sustainable to buy a new Tupperware container for meal prep? If you're going to buy a new container, I think the most sustainable thing to do would be to buy a new container that does not contain plastic. If you have to buy something new, that is, you can of course also find tons of containers in thrift shops and in secondhand shops that are already used, because buying a used product would always be more sustainable than buying a new product. If you already, however, have old Tupperware containers in your house, I definitely suggest that you just keep using them, because the overall most sustainable product is the one that you already have. So if you already have Tupperware containers, then please keep using them. But it wouldn't make much sense to go out and buy new Tupperware. Then you might as well buy another container that contains less plastic. Why bamboo toothbrushes instead of an electrical toothbrush? Okay, so I chose a bamboo toothbrush. I have never really had an electronic toothbrush, and I've talked to my dentist about this, and she says that my teeth looks fine, so there's really no point when I know how to brush my teeth with a bamboo toothbrush. I haven't chosen an electrical toothbrush because of e-waste, because of plastic, and because of the disposable heads. That is my personal preference. I don't think I've seen any sustainable brands make like the toothbrush heads for an electrical toothbrush that aren't in plastic. So that is sort of my reasoning. But I go to the dentist quite a lot. I want to make sure that my teeth are doing great, and they are. Zero waste window cleaning tips. If I have to clean my windows, I will use the same solutions as I use inside. I either have like a dish soap solution, or I have my homemade cleaning agent, and I'll simply use those on my windows as well. Just make sure to wipe them off really nicely afterwards. Perhaps rinse off with some water so the soap stains, won't stay on your windows. But the most important thing is to not let the water on the windows evaporate naturally, but to make sure to dry them completely off so they won't get like these lines on them. What kind of transportation is the best? Taking the bus, walking, or biking? Well, that depends a lot on where you're going. If it's a short distance, then obviously walking is the most sustainable, because it doesn't require anything to be produced or anything to, run on fuels. A bike is also great. I have a secondhand bike and I've had it for years. I keep having it repaired and I love my bike. But public transportation like buses and trains, always more sustainable than cars, but of course, because it runs on some kind of fuel, out of these three, walking, biking and taking the bus is the least sustainable, but it's still completely fine to do. How do you deal with family criticizing veganism? Well, I haven't had my own family criticize veganism all that lot, but I have encountered criticism. I try to keep my arguments objective. I don't want to get too subjective, because I get very emotional when I talk about the ethics of veganism, for instance. But if I stick to studies and statistics and facts, then it's much easier to distance myself a little bit and actually have a thorough discussion. People have valid concerns about health or environment, or anything in that regard. I'm totally up for having that discussion, no problem. But if people just criticize it because they think it's stupid or it's dumb, then I'm not going to engage at all. I think it's very important to value your own worth and time in that regard. How do you handle eco-guilt and anxiety when you cannot do everything that you want to do? I take a deep breath and remind myself that sustainability is not a linear process, and there's no finish line in sustainability. We can always evolve it, we can always do more. I remind myself that guilt doesn't plant any trees, and me beating myself up will save absolutely no one. What about the invisible waste and non-physical impact of products from the production process? Well, I am thinking quite a lot about the invisible trash of products, and in that regard I think zero waste is not necessarily always doing the best job to focus on that, because we tend to focus a lot on the trash jar and like the aesthetic trash jar, but that's why I stopped buying fast fashion. That's why I stopped flying. That's why I went vegan, because there's such a large impact behind so many. That's why I stopped buying new electronics. There's such a large impact behind all of these processes and all of these products. So yeah, this is stuff I think about and practice every single day. Did you find it hard to detox from meat, and did you have to eat more as a vegan? I did find it hard to detox from meat, in the sense that meat and like animal products in general have always been like a comfort food whenever I've been anxious or sad. You can watch my journey to veganism video if you want to know more about that roller coaster. I don't think I eat more as a vegan. Well, actually I think I did in the beginning. I had more small meals in between because I didn't know how to probably put together a vegan meal that was nutritionally dense for me. But I know that now. I know how to structure a meal so I get all of the nutrients I need. At which point can you call yourself zero waste? Well, this is a question. This is something I think a lot of people are actually stressing way too much about. I got so many of these, like, when am I good enough to call myself zero waste? When have I reached a point where I can call myself zero waste? And honey, whenever you want to. Like, seriously, whenever you want to. If you make the conscious decision to say no to plastic straws, you can call that a zero waste action, honey. Bam, you're there. Like, there is no zero waste police, although some people might think they are. Ignore that. Like, again, sustainability, zero waste is not a linear process where you at one point will reach a time where you are where you have to be. You can always go forward. I'm not even 100% zero waste. No one is. So if you want to call yourself zero waste, if you do something every day that makes you proud and is in a zero waste mindset, then please call yourself zero waste. That's completely okay. It's another thing when brands and like companies are using the term zero waste, because that's like a whole other thing. But you as a private individual, do whatever you want. If you're baking cookies and the recipe require the dough to be wrapped in cling film, can I use beeswax? Yes, I think that you can. If at any point a recipe requires you to wrap something in plastic, I will either just not do it or wrap it in my soy wax paper instead, or a towel, like depending on the recipe. Tattoos and sustainability, question mark. Yeah, I have talked about this in some other videos as well, is in a recent A Week in My Life video. I will leave it in the description if you want to know more, but just the gist of it is tattoos are not zero waste. I still have tattoos. It's something that gives me an incredible amount of joy, and I choose to do them with as little plastic as possible, but it's not perfect. But I really like it. But I try to do it with as little waste as possible, and compared to all the trash that I am not generating, it's a very small amount. And I do not get tattoos very often, and when I do, I don't just get like one thing. I usually go in for like an entire day, and then I get all the small things that I've been wanting for quite some time, also to reduce plastic. Yay. What about cars? Is it best to buy a new car or a second-hand one? I think the point here is that newer cars are often more eco-friendly and needs less fuel, stuff like that, whereas older cars often pollute more and need more fuel. Does that make sense? I think that's the point. I don't actually have a car. I would still say that a second-hand car is a great option, because you can find second-hand cars that are still rather new. There's no need to buy like a completely new car. You can buy used cars that are 1 or 2 years old still, or even 3-5 years old. That's still 100% a possibility, and I think that's the most sustainable thing to do. What did you do with the things you owned before becoming sustainable? Most of the things I still have. The things that I don't have, I either donated to charity shops and I gave them away to friends and family, but for the most part I still use those things. Why is it that zero waste companies are trying to get us to consume more? Yeehaw, this is the tea of it all. This is something that bothers me so much, because there's a lot of sustainable companies that are using marketing strategies that are just like so unethical and stupid. I made a video at some point about how a stainless steel straw company commented on one of my pictures that the most effective way of becoming more sustainable is by buying a plastic-free straw, where I'm like, transparency, I think, is the number one thing. So if you have a small company or a sustainable zero waste company, transparency, talking about how you don't actually have to consume a whole lot. I see how people react so well to these things, especially when they come from companies as well. One of my favorite bag companies, Charlie Feast, which makes great backpacks in recycled materials, often comment stuff like, who the hell needs 2 backpacks? If you already have one, don't buy our backpack. Like, that's so great, so cool. So I mean, I don't have time for like really unethical and over-consumptuous marketing strategies from sustainable companies. I feel like it's awful. How do you think this movement is affected after the pandemic? I think zero waste is going to be different for quite some time. From my point of view, zero waste is about minimizing unnecessary waste and not generating unnecessary plastic. And what was previously unnecessary has over the last couple of months been deemed very necessary for people to survive. There's still tons of things we can do. I have some follow me around videos about how I sort of stay zero waste during the pandemic and how I am not always zero waste during this pandemic. I'm definitely certain that this is going to change stuff like bulk stores and packaging and stuff like that, and we just have to accept that for the most part. Is it more important to you to buy plastic free or organic? This is a classic, and I so understand why it's here because it can be super confusing. I don't eat 100% organic all the time. I just can't. So I'm not going to do that. For me personally, plastic and that kind of waste is really important, so I will occasionally choose a non-organic item in favor of a plastic-free item. That is often how that works for me. Luckily, I don't always have to make that choice because sometimes it's the same product, which is amazing. But a good balance here, I think, is also helpful. Any tips on zero waste living on a low income? Less packaged food is often more expensive. That's 100% true. A lot of the zero waste options sometimes are more expensive. And now I don't know how low this low income is, so it's very hard to like say something specific. It's going to be really generalizing no matter what. But my own experience of life is that when I was a student, I didn't have a ton of money and I didn't earn anything from making this blog when I first started out. And what I found is that if you only make small, tiny, like incoherent, sustainable choices, it's going to feel super expensive to do these things. But if you like turn your entire budget around and there's tons of things that you stop buying, then you suddenly have a little bit more room to buy that one more expensive thing. Does that make any sense? I really want to make a video about how I spent 1 week's worth of money. I think that could be interesting to do. Again, this is something I need to expand upon just a teeny tiny bit, but my rule of thumb is that you don't necessarily have to buy anything to be zero waste. You can of course just use what you already have. When it comes to food, yeah, certain products can be a little bit more expensive, but if you phase out other unsustainable products, that can sometimes open up a little bit. But yeah, this is of course super generalizing. I think I should do another video about this. Is sticky materials like cling film and duct tape recyclable? No, they are not. I am not familiar with any facility that is able to recycle these products. They are always going to landfill, as far as I know. How to talk about zero waste without sounding weird and excessive. I think the number one thing here is to be real and transparent. If you go around saying stuff like, I'm 100% zero waste, you're going to sound a little hurt because people are going to be like, no one is 100%. What are we talking about? If you instead of talking about wanting to be 100% zero waste, talk about minimizing waste, talk about low waste, it's going to sound much more digestible for people around you. That's what I've learned myself. Some people are very turned off or even triggered by the word zero waste. And I, to some extent, get that, but some people are also just really presumptuous about these sort of movements. Which of course something that's not ideal, but we have to deal with it. So instead I always just say I want to minimize waste as much as I possibly can. That sounds way less idealistic and a lot of people will be able to understand it a bit more and get on board. That was the last bit. Yeehaw! I hope that you liked this video. Once again, a big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. You can find the link to the 2 months free subscription down below, and you can always subscribe to this channel. That would make my day. And all the videos and content I've been talking about during this video also linked down below. I hope to see you guys in my next video. Take really good care of yourselves. Until next time, bye. Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green zero waste content and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!